Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS System Administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we're going to be looking at how to use the APR, or Annual Performance Report, to find and fix errors with your chronic homelessness status. In a previous training, we covered what chronic homelessness is and how to properly code it in HMIS, in this case, Service Point. And today we're going to be showing you how to use the APR to make corrections. The APR is probably the single most important report in HMIS because so many things revolve around it. If you use SAGE, you need to have an APR. If you're doing the NOFA, that data is pulled from the APR. Your ranking is determined by the data in the APR. The APR should be the center of your solar system in terms of HMIS data quality. Anyone with an HMIS license should be running the APR for each of your programs at least once a month. Your agency admin and or program manager / director should be running it even more. The more you run the APR, the more you'll learn how to fix your data errors and the faster you'll be able to clean them up. Again, in today's training, we're going to be looking at how to use the APR to find any potential chronic homelessness errors. This will not be an in-depth look at the APR or a refresh of the chronic homelessness training. It's just showing you where you would find the errors on your chronic homelessness data. So this is the home screen for the Montgomery County website, for the Montgomery County Service Point. We're going to go over to reports. We click on that, and this gives you a whole list of what are the canned reports. You're going to want to choose out of the provider reports, the COC APR 2019. Don't worry about the 2019, it's just part of the name. We click on it, and then we have all little parameters that we need: our provider, our date range, and our entry exit type. We fill these out according to what we want to look at. We hit build report, and then the APR takes some time to load depending on what date range you are and how many programs you're looking at. So we could fill this out if our provider is Montgomery County Continuum of Care, put in a date range. Let's say you wanted to cover the year so far. You'd pick your entry exit type. Almost always it's going to be HUD. There are a few PATH programs, but the vast majority of the time it's going to be HUD. We'd hit build report, and then you can see that it's loading, it's running. And we don't want to wait the entire time it takes for the report to run, because then we're just going to be having dead air. So we're going to use this report I did earlier today. We can see about 15 minutes before I started the recording. And we're going to click on the magnifying glass because that one's preloaded. Now we can see this is what the APR looks like. Starts off showing us the programs that we're looking at. We've got a date range here from January 1st, 2021 to April 15th, 2021. And then we can start to go down into the APR. We are not going to cover every section of the APR because if you print it off, it's about 26 pages. And we're only going to cover the sections that pertain to looking at chronic homelessness data for this training. So let's start off with 5A, the report's validation table. This is a great quick summary of the data that you're looking at. So for example, we know that there's 690 people that were served in this time frame by the programs we're looking at. 652 are adults, 18 are children. 20 of them do not have an age recorded. And again, this is good because we go, oh, they don't have an age, we need to get that in. But the one we want to look at for chronic homelessness is right here, number 11. Number of chronically homeless persons. And if we scroll over, we can see that it's 142 people. So if these were my programs, I'm sure somewhere we would be able to tell, besides an HMIS, if this looks right. Oh, 142, that seems pretty low, or that seems pretty high. So for example, if your program only accepts chronically homeless people, and you only have 142 out of 690 clients, that's going to be a problem. That means that you haven't coded for several hundred people. And again, if you're not sure if these numbers look right, you can always click on the blue, and it's going to give you a pop-up of the names of people. You can do that for anything. Any of these will bring you up a list of people. And you can always download the list and turn it into an Excel spreadsheet for better navigation. So there's a lot you can do here with this to make sure that your chronic homeless people look correct, number-wise. So again, if you're an all chronic homeless program, we'd see here that you'd have a lot of cleaning up to do. Likewise, if you're not serving chronically homeless people, then you would have 142 people clean up because they're testing positive for chronic homelessness. And again, remember, chronically homeless status is determined by HMIS itself. There's a series of questions you have to enter on the entry, and only once you've answered those questions will the system say whether they are chronically homeless or not. What we want to scroll down to next, and again, remember, you use this report to find any errors. So even though we are only focusing on chronic homelessness, you can find errors for everything. Like 84 people are missing their social security number, 20 are missing their date of birth. And you want to use this report to clean up all your missing data, because every single piece that you are missing is one step down the ladder in your ranking. Every piece you have cleaned up gets you a little bit higher. You want to get these in. And not answering information is just as bad as answering it incorrectly. So let's go down to the next section, which is right here, which is 6D, chronic homelessness. Pretty appropriate since we're talking about how to fix chronic homelessness clients. We can see that there are 637 clients that we're looking at. 262 of them are missing the approximate date homelessness started question. This is a very important one for determining chronic homelessness. 199 are missing the number of times they were homeless in the past few years and the number of months that they were homeless in the past few months. This is either don't know, the client doesn't know, client refused, or is just plain not answered. So as we can see, 262 people are missing that approximate, 199 are missing the number of times, 187 are missing the number of months, which is odd because it means that some programs are just picking and choosing the questions instead of answering all three. Either way, we can see that there are over 200 people, possibly even as high as 300 people, who are missing the ability to determine whether they have chronic homeless status or not. The system says that's 47% of the records. 47%, almost 1 in 2 clients, we can't calculate whether they are chronically homeless or not. So this is so important. You need to be using the APR to check out these clients. You should be clicking on the blue number, giving you that list of 260 people, downloading them, and double checking all of those records to make sure that their chronic homelessness status is completed. You have to do that, especially if you were a low barrier shelter. I cannot tell you how important this is to make sure you have this information correct. Again, even if chronic homelessness is not a determiner for your coordinated entry system, it is a major factor for your funding from HUD and other funders, because this is used for your SAGE. This is used at point in time. This is used for the NOFA. So you have to get these questions in. So you need to go in, and this tells you exactly which question is missing. So you can download each of these, go in there, and fix them. It's really easy to do. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is a little bit farther down. So we're going to run down the report. And again, all of these questions are important and things that you need to be looking at. Again, a minimum of once a month, regardless of who you are with an HMIS license. And what we want to do is see how long this report is. We are scrolling down to 25. All of this is important, but not for the purposes of chronic homelessness, which is what we're talking about today. The next question we're looking at is 25A, number of veterans. Why? Because we have chronic homeless veterans and non-chronically homeless veterans. So we can see that there are 4 chronically homeless veterans, 22 that are not, 554 that are not veterans, 9 where we didn't really answer the status, and because we chose doesn't know or client refused, and 63 clients where we didn't bother to answer the question at all. Data not collected is always a red flag for the funders, especially in the APR. You always want your data not collected questions to be 0. If you do not see 0 in any field that says data not collected, this needs to be a priority for you in cleanup. Even if you change it to client doesn't know or client refused, it's still much better for your ranking and funding than data not collected. If this was my program, I would make it a priority to get these 63 done. You'd give it to those case managers and say, you need to get this information in. Again, you just click on the pop-up, there's your list. Get these to the case managers, whoever's doing data entry, and get that fixed. But again, if you know that there's more than 4 chronically homeless veterans, the problem is probably they answered the drop-down menu there of yes, no being a veteran incorrectly, or they didn't bother to code it at all. So this is super important for those chronic homeless veterans. And the final parts that we're going to look at is actually a set of questions. It's all of 26. Why? Because 26 is chronic homeless status. And we have all these different questions here. We're going to look at them each. Chronic homeless status, number of households with at least 1 or more chronically homeless person. And this is really important because this is looking at families. This is looking at households. And oftentimes, programs only remember to fill out the data for the head of the household, the leader of the family, whoever you've marked as the head of the household. And information for the children and spouse or significant other tend to go blank. When it's dealing with households, the most common times where we find information missing is with the non-head of the household members. So we can see here that 141 are chronically homeless, 217 are not, 19 did a don't know or refuse, 260 data not collected. That's 260 clients where we didn't bother to finish filling out the chronic homelessness questions. So like I said, nearly 300 earlier, looks to be true. We have to get these in. And because this is a household, this is the only area that we can't click on. But we can click on them down here. Number of chronic homeless persons by household. Again, 142 are chronic, 237 did not meet the conditions. All the questions were answered. 19 put in don't know or client refused for those questions. 292 clients did not have those questions answered at all. That's almost half. You have to get these in. Again, at this point, you click on the bubble, you get that list, you download it into Excel, and you need to go into the entry exit and answer those questions. Again, we cover what those questions are in a previous training. So if you do not remember, please refer back to either the video or the PowerPoint on chronic homelessness coding and definition. Gender of chronically homeless people, we see 98 are male, 44 are female, out of those 142 that are chronically homeless. The age of the chronically homeless people, well, and we would look here to see if anything looked weird. Like for example, for me, the 0 to 17, someone who is not an adult yet, but is coming up as chronically homeless. What I do is I click on that person, I'd go into their account and see if those questions were actually answered correctly, or if someone just plugged in with the head of the household. But we can see a nice breakdown of where the chronic homelessness is hitting our COC by age. And we can see it's really spread between the 25 to 61-year-olds. Almost an even spread here amongst those age categories. 26C is their mental and physical health conditions. 26F is what kind of income do they have? And this is really helpful too, because we can see 6 people do not have their annual assessment in. That's 6 people that are chronically homeless that need their annual assessment in. We cover annual assessments in a separate training. But again, annual assessments are so important. It's one of the things that you are heavily weighed on in HUD. So we'd want to get those 6 in. We'd also want to look at what type of incomes they have, because of course we want to try and get people to have any sort of income, whether it's benefits, whether it's a job, whether it's SSI, SSDI, retirement income. We want to try and get them to have some sort of income coming in. And finally, type of non-cash income sources. We can see 61 of those 100 plus have food stamps, 2 have some other non-cash benefit coming in, and we want to try and get as many people on benefits or unearned income as possible because we want them to have some sort of income coming in. And these are the questions that you're going to be looking at in order to determine a client, whether that chronic homelessness is quality or not. So what we would do is anytime something looks weird, again, those data not collected, we click on the blue, we get a pop-up that gives you all 292 people. It's only 20 per list. What I like to do is I like to download the results, click download. It becomes a zip file. Inside the zip file is an Excel spreadsheet. And it gives you the client name, client ID, so that you can start working on the clients immediately. And data quality is so, so important, especially with that chronic homelessness status, because it is weighed very heavily in your ranking, in SAGE, in your NOFA, and of course, when you submit that APR to HUD. So what we see here is that with this group of providers, there is a lot of cleanup to do. And we just want to make sure that we get that cleanup in. Again, we've looked at the different areas. Let me recover those one last time for you. 5A, we're going to want the number of chronic homeless persons, right? 6D, we can see how many people are missing the chronic homelessness status. We can't even determine it because the questions aren't answered. 25 is that veteran status, right? Which veterans are chronically homeless and which aren't. And then 26 is the data quality of all the people that are chronic homeless. This is telling you how many are, what their gender is, their age, if they have any disabilities, and their income. So this gives you a really great snapshot of not only your chronic homeless clients, but what cleanup you have to do in order to make sure that everyone is actually having those questions answered properly. That's it for today. That's all we have for the training here. Remember, you should be running that APR once a month, and you need to get those chronic homelessness questions cleaned up. Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully this training has been helpful, and we'll see me again with another training. Thanks again for stopping by.